You're probably far right too, probably. I mean, probably. I think we all are now, aren't we? Everyone's far right now. Let's talk about the extraordinary situation we've got after that Supreme Court ruling, which was very, very clear. The definition of woman is biological sex. So you can't let men who claim to be women, trans women, they call themselves, into women's safe spaces or single-sex spaces, because that would be against the law. We're still waiting for a formal final judgment from the Equality and Human Rights Commission. But meanwhile, shops and leisure centres and gyms and things have been told they can actually question someone who is trans, who is trying to access a single-sex space who they don't believe is that sex. What can they do in that circumstance?
Yeah, I mean, this guidance really reads like common sense, actually, and it's completely in keeping with the Supreme Court ruling. So what they are able to do, if they have a single-sex space, like a woman's only changing room, and somebody is entering that space that people think is probably a man, they are able to challenge that person. They're able to say, look, what is your sex? This is women's only space. Are you a woman? And if they say they are a woman, but everybody sort of thinks, no, this looks like a man, they're even allowed to ask for that person's birth certificate. And for evidence to show that they are the sex that they're saying they are. And even then, because of course, under the Gender Recognition Act...
I thought was a bit of a problem here with the birth certificate.
Yeah, so under the Gender Recognition Act, people who've obtained a gender recognition certificate can change their birth certificate. So even then you have a problem. This is why the Gender Recognition Act has caused so many problems, because it introduced this idea of legal sex and biological sex, where you could even change what's written on your birth certificate, which to me is like some, Orwellian rewriting of history. But what they have said, what this guidance says, even then, if somebody produces a birth certificate and you are still unsure, you can then still express concern and require further evidence. So this does give a lot of power back to employers and managers to be able to challenge.
But the question is whether they'll want to or not. Again, as long as they say they're not rude or offensive and they're not, shouting abuse or anything, they're not being, just simply, I'm so sorry, I'm just not sure, I'm not able to give you access. Now, I'm sure there'll be some situations where things go a bit wrong and people get, there are wrong decisions made. But again, this is about protecting women's, people talk about dignity, but safety ultimately. Women not wanting to get naked, to be changing clothes, to be in an enclosed space with a man, a physical man, when they believe that they should be in a single-sex space. There was a reason why we had those in the first place. It is fascinating how many organisations, the NHS, hospitals and others, dragging their feet, many other organisations dragging their feet, the Houses of Parliament dragging their feet, whether they're not going to change the rules. And yet, interestingly, we've had the Labour Party, we discussed it on the show yesterday, saying their all-women shortlist will not be open to trans women, i.e. men who want to go on an all-women shortlist. I don't approve of the all-women shortlist thing, but it's interesting, they've cancelled their Labour Women's Conference because they're not quite sure who should be allowed, because they've always allowed men who identify as women to come along. So this has really thrown everything up into the air, but it still hasn't resolved yet.
Yeah, I think people are still adjusting, but I do welcome this guidance because it does say that if you have a single-sex space, you claim it's a single-sex space, but you allow in transgender people, it ceases to be a single-sex space. What you actually do is you open up yourself to claims of sex discrimination, because if you allow in, for example, a man who says he's a woman into a woman's only space, but you don't allow in an ordinary man, well, you're actually discriminating against him, because why can't he be allowed in and the other man can?
It's just mindless. It's always interesting that we never end up talking about trans men, i.e. women who identify as men, wanting to use the men's loos. I mean, there's an occasional person on social media. It never seems to be an issue. It always seems to be men wanting to access women when they're vulnerable or undressed, isn't it? It's weird, that.
Yeah, I mean, this has been the big problem, and it's been obviously there's a focus on women's rights within all of this because, I mean, all of this guidance, to me, it just reads like common sense. But the point is, over the last 10 or 15 years, people have been terrified of just applying common sense because of gender ideology and fears of being called transphobic or bigoted. When actually most people were just trying to ensure that women were safe from predatory men.
And obeying the law. And as we discovered from the Supreme Court, the law didn't change. They just confirmed what it had always been. Amy Gallagher, short but sweet, always great to talk to you, commentator at the New Cultural Forum.